Good morning, everyone. Thank you for spending some time with us in these crazy times. It is really my pleasure to have Christina with me today and to share with you, some learnings and some ideas that we have, and as well as what we're seeing out there. First of all, I want to thank everyone that is really helping, all the doctors and grocery workers and nurses. I think it's very, very important that what they're doing, and we really, really appreciate it. So why the reason we're doing this today is, Christina and I have been talking for literally a couple of weeks now. What do brands need to do in times of crisis? And it is very obvious that we cannot continue doing everything that we've been doing before. In fact, every brand, in our opinion, needs to pause, needs to stop all their campaigns, and you need to rethink every campaign, every message that you send out, and everything that you're doing. So this is kind of what we're going to talk about. We're going to give you some examples, and we're going to keep this very interactive. So please, by all means, join in, send us some questions, and whether during the webinar, the webcast, or later. So Christina is one of our top, client success partners at Engage, and she's been doing this for a while. She knows what she's talking, and I love her opinion and her advice. So Christina, please take it away from here, and I'll be jumping in here and there.
100% conversational. That's how we want to keep this today, guys. Thanks for joining us. As Vassil said, I've been on the side of the coin, but I've also spent 15 plus years both on the agency and client side for major brands. So understanding, how we pivot and how we drill down to a place that we can engage our consumers is really why we're here today. And as Vassil said, in the last week, we've really seen brands have to kind of step out and make really hard decisions in balancing the future of not only their company, right, the capitalistic side of it, but their employees, right? And so finding that delicate balance has been really hard. I think it's a decision that seems obvious, but at its core is a really hard decision for CEOs to make. And I was on LinkedIn last night, actually, very timely, and the CEO of Best Buy, the former CEO of Best Buy, Hubert Jolly, actually wrote a beautiful article, and it's called "A Time to Lead with Purpose and Humanity," and it's on in the Harvard Business Review right now. And it's such a timely read because he does nod at a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today, and validates just all the things that Vasco and I have been kind of tossing around, as this thing was progressing and as we were kind of starting to see where things would lead, and where we might be today as we look towards managing in this time of COVID, right, and beyond. So one of the things that we definitely started to think about, because we are also, data centric and always want, what are consumers thinking? What kind of behavioral trends are we seeing? Our first inclination really is to understand, right? What are consumers feeling right now? What kind of mindset do they have? And unpacking that. And so we can glean a lot from data, right? We can get a lot of information from data points, and especially if you have a mobile app, how are people behaving? Also online, like, are they coming back and forth, back online? What are they doing? What kind of transactions are they making? What are they searching for? That kind of stuff is really rich. And where we bridge the gap is where we think of, like, for example, surveys, or ways that we can ask questions to truly unpack what they're doing, or conceptualize what they're doing against what they're feeling, right? So some of the things that we wanted to start with is this idea of, we can make these assumptions, but looking at the data and really asking these tough questions is how we're going to get there. We're going to get to some brands that are doing a nice job of this. We're also going to show some examples that we feel where brands can go a little deeper as we go along with the webinar.
And just to add to this, we are sharing online, and we'll email you guys several reports that we've done with our data analysis team on what our customers are doing, The first report that we shared today is from analyzing 10 million users in APAC. At the same time, we're working on another report which analyzes something like 850 million users across different verticals and what they've been doing in the last couple of months. But what is important is to really sit down and look at your own data and analyze what your brand is doing and what your users are doing. You can get ideas of what's happening out there, but this does not mean that you have to follow what everybody else is doing.
Okay.
You really need to put in perspective how you're being relevant and what is happening with your users in your region, with your app and your web and digital engagement.
And what we know, Vasco, a great point, is that putting in this time up front, right, to really understand consumer sentiment right now,
Yeah.
especially now, is really how brands are going to find their new center, right?
Correct.
And that's the truth. Like really, the 3 weeks ago, we weren't going to have these conversations because this did not feel as real as it feels today.
Yep.
Presently, there is a new status quo. There's a new normal that we're needing to thrive and figure out how to kind of pivot around, right? So the goal is, honestly, to figure out how your brand can be a certainty in this time of uncertainty. And the data piece helps us to understand the mindset. And then the other piece of this, which we're going to unpack this and unravel this onion for you, is how does your brand then also meet users where they are, right? The holy grail is really saying expectations tend to be linear, but in reality right now, everything's really fuzzy and hazy for a lot of users, including us, right? We're all making it real time.
We are learning as we speak, and we're learning from seeing what others are doing and talking to analysts from companies like Gartner and Forrester, and trying to pack it all in. And this webinar, in fact, was put in the last minute over the weekend with the marketing team, and we went through a huge learning curve ourselves. Usually it takes you weeks to do things. Now you got to shift, you got to cut corners, you got to do things that you usually are not used to, and we all have to adapt. So yeah.
Yeah, and some of the learning that we've seen so far, right? And like we said, we've looked across a lot of our client base, and we client base even just to look for examples of how different brands are dealing with this, large brands, smaller brands, and we're seeing that they fall into certain buckets, right? The types of communications that are being sent. And some of this is to be expected, right? So everyone's kind of doing kind of the useful, more citizenship level stuff, which is, how are we going to be judicious about making sure people are safe, right? That idea of safety first. And you're seeing this with brick and mortar stores shutting down, banks, etc. The next level up is kind of talking about how can I be helpful? And that's more operational, but it's, okay, I have to close my store, but there's still curbside pickup, right? So we're seeing a lot of folks playing in those two spaces, and that makes sense because, again, we're building the plane and flying it as we're going. What we're trying to do today and what we're encouraging brands to do, a lot of our clients, including anyone here today to bring back to your teams, is moving beyond those basics, which we expect. And actually it's so funny. I saw an article from an e-marketer writer, and she said, if I needed Sherman paint, I would have that would have been a meaningful email to get,
Yeah.
But it's that lesson of everyone's flooding our inboxes right now with our COVID, response and what we're doing, which is necessary and useful and helpful. How do we push past those two, layers to the essential, right? How are you helping me? And I think that that's where we need to land. And that's what this webinar is really going to unpack as we keep going.
Yeah, and basically, you guys, what you got to think about here when it's essential is how is your brand positioned uniquely to help people? How is your brand and messaging that you are sending out there in any of the channels being relevant for every user? This is where personalization and using data, it's all about. We have examples, as Christina said, where people have part of the message, hey, stay safe, and this is what we're doing, but how are you helping me? And these are some of the things we're going to look at with what different apps are doing right and wrong.
Yeah. So as we think about what this essential communication is today, it's beyond what we thought about personalization 3 weeks ago, right? So I'm going back to like, this is very much not our status quo, business as usual. Personalization is not just inserting a first name. Yes, there's some dynamic content and those infusions that make sense. Personalization right now is that this is personal. And so it's really going to require brands to drill down and unpack and figure out how to bridge that space between what we need to do as a brand and what people need to hear and feel from us. Because what we do understand is that people need to hear from people, right? And the way they want to hear from us is, the usual channels. And, Vasco and I talked a lot about, well, what's the right channel and what are we seeing?
Yep.
And what we saw a lot of is tons of emails. I mean, so many emails about COVID. Great. Again, falling into those useful and helpful buckets, but very little by way of push, very little by way of SMS. There are some brands that are doing some landing pages. They're changing some of their UX to speak to, or have like modular inserts to talk about COVID. But we're really not seeing as much of brands, at least in the US, using push and SMS as much.
But it's not just that. It's not just the channels here, right, guys? What you got to think about is everybody probably by now has got 100, if not 500 emails from the CEO of a company, and some have recordings of their CEOs and head of customer success or support. Again, this is maybe useful. It's now becoming a little too much, especially if you start emailing a customer that was your customer 10 years ago. And now may not be the right time to re-engage. So you really have to think about the core of the message that you're sending and the timeliness and how you're adding benefit to the conversation. Just don't jump on any and everybody's bandwagon here, try to do the same as everybody else is.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we talked about too, Vasco, was the idea that some channels might float to the top that had previously had lower adoption, right? So I was thinking about this browser push, right?
Correct.
Not many people, slow adoption, at least for most people outside of maybe the news category. Yep. But is this a time where we're all kind of confined to our homes and working from home and more on desktop than ever? Is this a time where that's a medium or channel that should be pushed to the forefront to help as well? So those are things and decisions that brands also need to make.
Yes, and this is what it's all about. Many of the brands out there, especially app makers, have the technology. And the whole point is use the technology in a better way. Don't just rely on what has worked before. You can really use the technology. And we are not talking about using the technology the way maybe Alipay and Alibaba are doing it in China, where they're geo-tracking you and they're letting you know when you can go out of the house. Not yet. By the way, that may not be a bad idea, but let's use the technology that is there to engage users in the right way and be helpful.
Amazing. I'm curious, I mean, just to open it up a little bit, how are you guys using some of these channels right now? Is there working from home, guys? There's my doorbell. So this is real. But what channels are some folks using? I see, is there a raised hand there? Anyone want to weigh in on channels that you're seeing or using today?
Yeah, if just chat on the chat, here if you have any questions. Yeah, people are saying here that they've seen a lot of videos of marketing customer success, as I was just saying. In fact, I have a screen on our Slack channel where I've shared maybe I looked around, and we also talked with our customer success team, and we have maybe 50 different examples of similar things, but very few are going beyond just talking about, hey, this is what we're doing, and we're here for you, and business is going to continue, and we'll get over it. But I don't think many are really taking that a step further where you can. So
and that's is there another question, Vasco?
I'm trying to see here.
I think I saw one pop up. But that's a nice segue into why we're here today and what we're talking about, which is this idea of how do you get to that essential level of communication that we all need today. And there's 3 principles that we've honed in on, right? We're going to unpack examples that show brands that are doing some of these things nicely and where there's room for growth. But the 3 are, connection, centeredness, and community. And so we're going to go ahead and just start to unpack some of these now, these 3 principles. When you think about connection, we talked about this being the new business as usual, right? So we're going to coin that term because that's where we are today. And so the brands that are going to survive this and come out, we're all going to survive, but the brands that come out with lodged in users' minds and with a sense of loyalty or affinity are those that can anticipate and pivot, right? And we talked about us doing that over the weekend. And it's hard, it's painful, it's new territory, but we've got to do it. How do you anticipate and pivot so that you ride this wave with your user? And a lot of it also comes down to meeting users where they are. Right. And you're going to see this kind of goes right back to this idea of just understanding and using data to centralize your actions at this time. We have to be really quick, really nimble, so that we can understand. So that agility and data playing together is where is really the sweet spot for this first point of connection. Right. So we do some examples. I'll let Vasco kind of take you through some that we wanted to serve up today.
Yeah, again, these are just some random, examples, to be honest with you. But we saw Nike, as we were all just talking about this, sharing information and making it really human-like. It's real personal. Somebody's talking. There is a video. It's not just a little email that it kind of sometimes there's so many emails that we get. So Nike used the platform of their mobile app to really connect with their users, I think, to the next level. I think that they can do more, but it's a great example, and they were probably one of the first brands that I've seen.
Mm-hmm. And using influencers too, right?
Absolutely, so they're using influencers, and funny enough, I've been talking to NBA players from the Warriors. To maybe help us in getting some of the message for some of our brands out there to be public speakers, and some of them are very open about this. So there is a side conversations happening with other organizations out there that are very interesting, and people willing to help. But the other thing is, Target. Target, again, they came up right away and explained to people when they're open, what they're doing, what they're not doing. I wish Target can do a little bit more. I don't have a picture here, but Amazon India, for example, they have completely revamped their landing page on mobile. It is extremely personalized. Everything from suggestions of products to messages about staying at home to how they're delivering, the food and everything else that are essential, medicine and toilet paper and everything else. They really personalize the page, and I believe I've put a video on LinkedIn. You can check it out, but it's very well done. Target is still not there. If you look at the landing page, it's not personalized. I don't buy, baby kids toys anymore, but still there was a whole section of baby kids toys and furniture. You know, and I know they can do better. And I know they're looking for right now more data analysts to help them with that. I saw some of their job postings, but yes, this is a connection, but it's just here. It can be over there. And then Zomato, you know, that's a Indian brand, I believe, that does food delivery. You know, they're thoughtful. You know, it's not just about delivering food, but you know, how can you stay healthy?
Mhm.
So, good
And
examples here.
yeah, and for anyone with a brand, a food delivery brand, I know Blue Apron's probably already doing some stuff like this. But if you're a restaurant right now, I have a restaurant, a local restaurant called Lombardo's. Right away, they were using SMS to say, "Look, doors
Yep,
are closed, but we can give you 10% off a delivery, and we'll explain to you how we're delivering it. We'll just drop it at your door. You know, everything needs to be transacted online, but we're here for you." I would love to also see a recipe from Lombardo's, right? If they wanted to text, send an SMS with a link to one of my favorite dishes, right? We
yep.
have to really think outside the box because that goes a long way. And so while we're feeling like, oh, you know, no one's transacting now or transaction is going to be lower, the conversion is going to be lower. Yeah, but the conversion, the loyalty piece of that part, that EQ part,
That's what it's all about.
we,
That's what it's all about.
we need
Yes,
to
I
tap into
agree.
that right now.
I
So
didn't
getting
think of that. I didn't think about the recipes until you mentioned it, but many of the local restaurants have over time shared recipes, but this is the easy one, right?
yeah,
Yeah, we've closed, but yeah, this is my secret recipe for the coleslaw at
make it at home.
Bluebell's Betty.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah,
You
make
know,
it
I
at
can
home. And why
exactly make it
not,
at
while
home.
you're at it, build a community. We're getting there, right? But we're foreshadowing this
Yes.
week. Build a community and say, look, as if you make our dish, Lombardo's like vodka sauce or whatever, hashtag Lombardo's and now we're having a cook-off, right? A community cook-off. I'm against my neighbor, she's against me, and we're all saying we can't taste each other's food, but I definitely know mine's better, right? So you
Correct.
have to get creative and you have to make it fun. You have to find out how to really traverse this new normal. So we're not going to belabor the point. We're going to get on to the next one, which is centeredness. We think about, typically we're thinking about, you know, meditation and all that, which is very near and dear to me. But I think it can also be applied to organizations, right? How do you now reevaluate the benefits that you provide to users? To get that install, to get that person to visit your website, you promised them certain things. And so those were the benefits that motivated that action. How do you now go back to those things and true those up? Do we need to tweak them?
Yep.
How do you make them real and contextual given what's going on today? And most of all, you know, you can't make things up now, right? Everybody, especially really large brands, everyone kind of knows who you are. Be authentic, right? Stay true to who you are, but still figure out what those key benefits are that you want to show up and push to the front line.
I mean, you know, I don't know how many of you have got calls or emails about refinancing. I went and checked the rates, and literally a second after I submitted it, I started getting phone calls. And when I said, well, listen, I'm just kind of, you know, checking things out, calls continued for literally a week. And this is during this crisis. And so people need to really evaluate what is their engagement strategy on top of everything else. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just when you're going to send an email, when you're going to send a push, but when you're going to make a, you know, cold call. You know, it can really backfire. In fact, I told people, please take me off your calling list because yes, rates are good, but I just don't have the time right now. I have other things to worry about.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. So we have some centeredness examples that we want to share with you. Brands that are doing a nice job of this, right? So
Yep. I mean, yeah. So companies like Western Union, we all know them. You know, we've seen their logos everywhere. People are sending money to their relatives, usually around the world or in different states, or kids that are going to college. They were able to take their message and personalize it and to make sure that you understand that they're there for you, they understand your problems, and not just talk about that what you can do with them, but also talk about fraud. This is how you need to be careful. And this is very important. Again, they understand the user from both sides, not just that people need money, but also, hey, be careful. This is what is going on, and you need to be very aware of it. Another example, I just saw this yesterday on Twitter. A German company, one of the phone operators, I wonder who it is, is now uh, change the message inside the phone operating system to remind people to stay at home. I mean, this, how cool is this? And it's probably very simple, but it's very, very important. And again, food delivery, uh, companies, not just DoorDash, I believe, Uber Eats has also waived their delivery fees. Um, it's all about supporting the local businesses. We know that this local businesses are going to be hurt the most, and if we can help them, everybody wins, and less people are going to be in pain. Great examples of awesome work by those marketers, and we wish others will learn from this and do more and take it to the next level, obviously.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on the Western Union piece, right? This is an example of them checking all the boxes. When we talked about having useful, helpful, and then essential communications, and then they did it in a very modular, clean way. So they're saying, look, and they have hashtags, which is great. So as much as you can drive, the I call it verticalizing via, these channels, wonderful, right? So they have hashtag send money, hashtag COVID-19, money transfer, but they also have hashtag fraud awareness. So they're creating a voice in the market where we need it. And they're also, why they're under this centeredness bucket is that they're also staying true to who they are, right? When you think of Western Union, you think of a safe way to send money. And that's important because we're usually sending money to people we care about, typically, I would think, for their business model, or you want to safeguard the money that you worked hard to earn. So when they kind of front load with, yes, we care about COVID and here's our response, but we want you to understand in this time, there might be higher fraudulent activities. This is something that's really critical and a really great
Yep.
example of them kind of covering all these bases.
Correct.
All right, so I'm going to move quickly to the third piece, which is community.
Yes.
This idea of shared goals, going back to our recipe idea, how do we build community? And a brand that's, done a really good job of this, kind of harnessing the brand community and using, if you have an app, using your app as a conduit, or using your communications as a conduit to build community, using hashtags in some of your, it doesn't have to just be within email, it could be within a push as well. And then what some of this stuff does too is as you start to see these communities bubble up, the benefit for you as a marketer is the data points, right? Understanding the collective in a little bit more of a robust way, right? So we can crunch the numbers, we can always aggregate data, but if we start to see clusters of people or different types of groups kind of coming together in your community, that tells you that's also a nice data point too and some insights. So this idea of trust and togetherness is huge. And a brand that's doing a really nice job of this is Remix.
Yep.
And so they are brick and mortar. You go there, you work out. And so what they've done is they moved everything online, and they're setting up online virtual workout sessions, 15-minute increments. And, what I thought was super interesting is that they waive membership fees and stuff like that. And they're seeing an increase in new people signing up, who will, once everything passes, we can assume will stick with the brand, right? So, and they're having a lot of, it's a huge social footprint for them right now, talking about what they're doing, a lot of buzz. Mindbody has been promoting what they've done as well, which is how I found out about them. But this is another way that a brand has really quickly pivoted and in a week, right? Let's call it a week or two maximum, to both protect itself as an organization, but also lend value to the user lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, community to different people may mean different things. We've seen some interesting other examples out there of what communities are doing as well. One that is not mentioned here is this French company called Decathlon. I believe I'm probably butchering their name right now, but they have completely open sourced the design for a snorkeling mask. And right now, people are using this in France and in Europe. I think there's hundreds out there in hospitals to really help patients. And this, to me, is like the ultimate, community work, where a brand has something of value and they figure out how to share it with everybody else. Really, really amazing. Here are some examples that we also kind of picked up the last few days. One is from Nextdoor. And not only did Nextdoor talked about what they're doing and what people can be doing and should be doing, this morning, one of their leads or their machine learning picked up a very important message that was from a local person in Auckland who was essentially making masks for doctors in the area. Their machine, sewing machine broke, and they say, hey, I have all this material, who can help? There was 120 people that jumped and said they were willing to help, and they have material and machine, and they want to build this and make those masks. Really, really amazing. Usually you get those, highlight messages in email when you click on them or something else. I didn't. This was a new message for me that had just happened a couple months hours ago, and somebody realized it's important and they took it out. The Brooklyn one is yours. You saw it.
I wanted to share the example I gave you with Nextdoor when you shared yours with me. We did this independently. So Vassil was talking about his Nextdoor example. And I mentioned, oh yeah, I was on my Nextdoor app because it's become a critical one for me now to understand what's going on with our neighbors. And some of it's comical, but one was a couple who had to postpone their wedding and had put on Nextdoor like, hey, look, we have to postpone our wedding because we obviously can't have groups of people together, but we don't want to postpone our love, basically. And we want someone, if anyone's around and, we can find a safe way to do this, we want to get married. Is anyone around who can officiate our wedding within, our neighborhood? And I thought that was really interesting, but it's the way that these stories will keep bubbling up.
Yep.
But it's that Nextdoor app kind of powering, these types of things, which are so powerful. One is, getting these masks out the door. One is making sure these people feel like this sense of they can continue with the normalcy of their love and continue, their connection. So very interesting, very different, but very interesting use cases towards kind of the same end.
Yeah, and the other thing is, look at what, PayPal is doing. They're reminding you that not only you can pay for things on, on eBay and send money to your friends, you can actually donate. In fact, they just saw that Yelp and somebody else is trying to do the exact same thing. Letting people know what communities and organization need the most right now, and making it very easy for you to do. So this really is essential. This is really very relevant information. If they know that you're sending money, that you've maybe donated to different organizations, whether it's for dogs and other reliefs, they are targeting those people and saying, hey, why don't you donate to the right organization that really needs it right now? So really, really powerful, really useful, and people gonna remember this. But more importantly, you're gonna make a difference. This is what it's all about right now. It's about collaboration and helping others. So, very, very good examples. And Swiggy here, and how to remind people what is going on and how they're dealing with safety with their food and everything else. Very good examples here, Christina.
All right, and so
anybody has any questions, guys, please shoot more questions. We only get kind of like literally one question here from Vakshita. If you guys have any questions, please shoot them right now, or obviously you can do it later on LinkedIn and Twitter and everywhere else, or email us, but if you do, if any of this jives with you, and your brand is thinking about what do I do, we're not going to say who is the brand, but we would love to hear from you and make this as useful as possible.
Yep.
So
And fill
use
down
that
some ones.
chat button down on the bottom. Yeah, let's continue here. And
I think I just saw one thing come in.
yes. Have you seen any brands helping parents with homeschooling or distance learning to keep kids engaged? Great question. My kids are all out of of the house, and one is in college, one is somewhere else. But
I can take
you
that.
can jump on that one.
I have a almost 6-year-olds, and I'm learning. First day of homeschooling was last week. We are working off of a packet and stuff like that, but I'm realizing that within his classroom there are websites and different learning online or digital learning tools that they have access to in the classroom that are typically subscription based, right? So the school kind of funds that are now free, right? So one brand that sticks out for me is Zoom. And there's a slew of them. So if you guys need us, I can send you the list because I have it. I actually sent it to the superintendent of our district too. There's a slew of online learning platforms for a range of kids. So from kindergarten all the way through like junior high school, that have just made it. Audible has also made books and access for kids free. So there's a lot of brands that are doing it. The fact that we're not hearing about it, right? Because I'm getting it in bits and pieces. I've gotten it from teachers. The Audible tip I got from a girlfriend of mine. She saw an article, but I am an Audible member, right? You would think that the first thing that they would know is, hey, Christina, if you have a kid, because maybe they don't have that data point, for all the kids in your household, if you have some, right? We can understand that kind of language right now. Find these books for free.
I think that Khan Academy has stepped up even more, even though they were doing a lot before. They were, I think, the leader in the space. I believe they've done even more right now. Mm-hmm. So there is some definitely interesting examples out there. Some of the content that has been suggested by, the Netflix of the world and OTT world, has been personalized even more so based on user experience and based on the users. Mm-hmm. So they're doing an interesting job there as well, but not really, again, not using the technology as far as they can take it. And this is what it's all about, you guys. There is push, there is SMS, there is in-app messaging. Everyone can do more and be more relevant and more essential. And
and if you're doing more, let us know you are, right? Because those channels are there for you to let us. We have such massive reach when we think about people who are opted in across these channels. I don't think I missed that Audible email. I just found out from a friend and researched it on my own to find out that it was free for kids. So a push notification, which I have turned on, would have been nice to let me know, and then I would have shared it with others. I think I saw a question come in too.
Yes, there is another question here that was forwarded. Thank you, Jashan, from Vakshida. And how do you convince your boss not to cut down the marketing at this time? It's a very, very relevant question. We've talked about this, and we're talking about this literally on a daily basis among our team. And it really depends, obviously, on the company and the brand that you are and your users. And there are brands right now that are affected more than others. We've looked at data from Uptopia. We've looked at data from our customers. Travel is really affected. Hospitality is really affected. But does that also give, for example, an opportunity to really help your users and push loyalty? Because in the end of the day, business will come back to normal over time. And the brands that are helping and are engaging with useful information, with new policies that are helping them, taking out fees, and making it easier to rebook and giving you credits for the future, and giving you ideas of what you could be doing in 6 months
Yeah.
for your next trip are the ones that are gonna win.
And
The one,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead, Christina.
Yeah, no, I just want to kind of put hammer to that point, which is when we look at some of the travel apps today, some of the data, and again, we're still kind of unpacking some of this. You
Yep.
might see that downloads from an acquisition standpoint, downloads might be lower, but or are starting to slope
Yep.
downward. But you're seeing higher DAUs because that's a way for people to escape. And so you can, there's a lot of different ways to answer that question. One is the way that Remix is doing it right now. They're not doing a lot of spend. In fact, they suspended the membership fees right now, but they're still seeing an uptick in new people signing up. Those are new leads. So even if, they're just motivated to work out during COVID, they do still have these email addresses and these folks coming in. And the assumption is that they'll keep a decent percentage of them even after COVID is gone because of the experience that they had presently. But again, so you don't always have to spend a lot for everything, but it's about that idea of being relevant. You have to figure out where to put your spend, right?
Yeah,
And
but
if you have to scale back, you just have to do it in a way that whatever you're
well,
doing is maximizing the levels that you feel comfortable with right now.
another way I think to look at it, by the way, is that many companies are going to have to rethink their business model and their go-to-market strategy entirely. There may be new business opportunities where if you were a gym before, people were going to your gym on a regular basis, and now you can convert into a virtual gym where you can do all the exercise online. That's a new way to get business going. And whether now you're not charging, these people will eventually start paying you. They still need the leader to talk to them and tell them what to do, whether this is on a one-on-one basis or something else. We were talking a lot about banks actually this week. I think was like a bank week or something. We did a webinar last week with Forrester on this. This is probably one of those moments for banks to reinvent themselves. Many have mobile apps, many have the technology, but they were not using it to the optimal way. I mean, I think we use this phrase, banking is dead, long live mobile banking. Because do I want to go to the bank and wait online and deposit checks at the cashier at the counter? No, I have not done this for years. You don't have to go and write bills anymore. You can do it on your phone. These applications are there. You just need to expose them, and you need to remind people about using them. And the data that you have about your users, when they're paying bills, how they're paying bills, you can use it now to empower engagement and make it even safer for people. Do I want my dad, who is 83, to be opening mail and writing bills? No, I told him, in fact, I had that conversation with him, you gotta go digital. This is essential right now that you do, so you don't go to the bank, so you don't touch mail, so you can really make your life easier. So it's time to rethink business models and business as usual and engagement in many, many different ways, not just the messaging that you're sending.
Yeah, and I think real quickly on that point, there are some products and features that, kind of took the back burner when things are BAU that feel, again, similar to browser push, need to be pushed to the forefront. Like I know for a fact, like Citibank has a money management, and they all do, right? They have money management features within that are offered as part of your banking experience with them that some people might use heavily and some don't. This is a time to drive adoption of those things, right?
Correct.
So when you think about allocation of marketing dollars, think about, okay, again, contextually, what will be helpful to people who are concerned right now about budgeting and, cost of things and access to and joblessness, that kind of stuff. So opportunity to push some of these things that we might have did a soft entry into the market with. Now it's time to punch that up and decide where we're going to kind of take the brands that we have and the features that we are using to support those brands. So I know time is of the essence, and I want to make sure we get as many
Yes.
questions in as possible. Vassal, do you want to talk about some of the stuff you mentioned it earlier that we are doing?
Yeah. So we are doing a whole bunch of different things. Obviously, I think having this type of conversation with you guys and engaging with you and sharing with you what we are learning, what we're seeing in APAC. We have a big user base over there. It's one way of learning this. And again, keep in mind we're here to help you. You can email us afterwards. You can give us a call. We would love to kind of take that as a challenge and see what we can suggest to you that you can do. But what we've been doing is our data team has been analyzing data of our customers, as I mentioned, of 850 million users of what they've been doing in the last month or so across different verticals, across different industries, across different regions. We're going to be publishing this very soon. I think today, in fact, we just published a blog, The Impact of COVID-19 on Mobile App Users. We used a very small sample there. I think this was just based on 10 million users, small compared to the other one. But interesting data. We'll send a link to you afterwards. We're also working on a playbook with a lot of examples. Again, if you put things into different buckets of useful, helpful, essential, what are companies doing, and maybe what they should be doing and what they could be doing to make that engagement and take it to the next level, to help the users, to make sure that their users are becoming more loyal. Because if many of those users are not buying today, they will be soon, hopefully sooner than later. We're seeing in some countries in Asia already companies are going back to work. Things are flattening over there. Things are a little bit more under control. But this will take a couple of months, maybe. Here things are a little crazier, maybe. We have democracy, and people take democracy in their own hands. But anyway,
And I think we have two more questions, Vasco.
Oh, we have more questions. Sorry, I did not see them. I apologize. Let's just see here. Over what duration of coming time should the marketing team look at changing the tone of marketing campaigns? How do brands understand empathy during this time? More great questions. So, go ahead if you want to jump in.
It's hard to put a time stamp on it because of everything that's so uncertain. I think the way that you would do this is to really continue to look at how users are behaving, right? It's this constant distilling of data and looking at behaviors and asking, right? I think this is a time where we can use behavioral data to make some hypotheses and assumptions, but we can also use, our mediums or mediums like Jebbit, for example, to ask questions of users and find out how are they feeling. And as long as we're doing it from a place of empathy and it's a question that, we're well with it, they understand the purpose of the question, and we relay that to them. I feel like people are going to be a lot more open because we're all collectively in a much more vulnerable state than, again, we were a month ago. So I think that, it's every brand will be different, right? And, this is a new BAU though, right? There is no turning back in terms of our collective mindset because none of us at least in our lifetimes, I think, right? I mean, even my grandmother, she's 90 something. And this is like, whoa, what is this? Like, even in her lifetime, born in 26, has never really had to live through something that has been this dramatic, this quickly. And so we're all going to have to just kind of, again, build the plan as we're flying it and learn as we go.
The one thing I wanted to jump in here is, you could do A/B testing on messaging and see what works better.
You could.
And again, look at the data on a daily basis. Don't wait for a week to look at it. And look at what competitors are doing. I had encouraged people online that we all need to collaborate, and we're all in this together. And you can talk to your partners, you can talk to your customers, you can do surveys, as you mentioned, Christina. There's so many ways to do it, but there is definitely not a time period that anybody can put in. It will be different for different cities. It will be different for different countries, for different cultures, for different apps, for different verticals. And we all
that's a
need to
huge
understand that.
point. That's a huge point in terms of segmenting, right? The way
Yes.
that this is popping up across the country today and across the globe, understanding and having some kind of foresight into the impact. Like we're getting on calls with our colleagues saying, hey, how are things in Europe? How are things in India? How are things this place and that place? Just because we need to get a pulse check on and how are you doing? So if we are judicious enough as marketers, we're going to try to understand and maybe segment by location, segment by city, change the tone. Like, because if we're showing users, right, in New York, for example, we're sending a message and we make that specific message to New Yorkers based on something that they're specifically going through right now. Then that means a lot. And if you send a similar kind of message or a message to someone in a different state that maybe it's a different part of the curve right now, your message could be different too. So I think it's really, again, all comes back to data, understanding, segmenting, and just being agile enough to make quick decisions, educated decisions, but quick decisions, and being okay with that. And again, Vassil had a good point, testing and learning.
Testing and learning. And look at what's happening around your community, because again, your brand is based somewhere in some city and your employees work there. You know, for example, here in Auckland again, you know, the shelters had a shout out that there is a lot of dogs that some are being surrendered, that some of the organizations are not able to take dogs. Some of the volunteers are older people that have, you know, medical conditions and they can't interact the same way they did before. You know, this is a perfect time to help some of those organizations that are local in ways that you never did before. You have audience, you have users. Use that technology to help others around you, and it will pay off. It will help others. You will add benefit that you never thought possible. And it takes very little to do it. It's an email, it's a post message, it's an SMS. We all can do it. We should be doing more. And again, if you have any questions about this, ideas that you want to share with us, that we can share with our users, where we can share with our customers and our partners, please reach out. We have my email. You have Christina's email here. I'm on LinkedIn. We're on Twitter 24/7. You know, let us know how we can collaborate and, you know, help you and help others.
Yep.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, everyone, again, for your time. I know that there is a lot of other things that you could be doing. We will make this available on demand. We will email everybody a copy of this as well. And again, reach out if you have any questions. Happy to discuss it any time of the day on any channel.
And stay safe.
Yeah, stay safe. Stay at home. Don't go out there. You know, be safe. It will make it easier for everybody else.
Take care, guys.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.